For you at the top, this afternoon, the president will bring together leaders from both the labor and business community at the White House to talk about the critical need to invest in America's economic strength by passing the bipartisan infrastructure framework. While some of the participants at this roundtable may have sat across the negotiating table in the past, now they've joined together as part of a broad coalition of labor and business leaders backing this plan. And they're joined in their support by bipartisan leaders in Washington, governors, mayors, and an overwhelming majority of the American people. I also wanted to note that today the Department of Justice is announcing or has announced the launch of 5 gun trafficking strike forces in regions around the country to combat the uptick in gun crimes that we've seen over the last 18 months. As part of this announcement, the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General will visit the headquarters of ATF in Washington before the Attorney General travels to Chicago to meet with the leaders from the Chicago Police Department and attend a listening session with participants in a group that offers innovative programming to reduce gun violence. The regional strike forces we've talked about a bit in the past, but they will leverage existing resources to ensure sustained efforts across city and state boundaries to help stem the supply of illegally trafficked firearms in 5 key regions: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento region, and Washington, D.C. And this is part of the administration's comprehensive crime reduction strategy announced last month at the White House with Attorney General Garland. In addition to targeting gun traffickers to keep guns out of the hands of criminals, the president's plan bolsters local law enforcement efforts by giving them the resources they need to hire more police officers and engage in effective community policing. I also wanted to note that this afternoon the president will sign H.R. 1652, which will help strengthen and restore funding for the Crime Victims Fund, which has lost billions of dollars over the last 5 years. This was originally passed in 1984, which established the Crime Victims Funds, which received most of its funds through deposits from criminal fines and penalties from convictions in federal cases, and does not receive any appropriated funding of taxpayer dollars. The awards grants to states, local governments, and other entities through DOJ's Office for Victims of Crime. With that, Josh.
Thanks, Jen. 3 subjects.
Okay.
First, given the spread of the Delta variant, return to offices, is the administration looking at new mask guidance as reported by the Washington Post?
Well, I know that the head of the CDC, our public health arm, just spoke to this earlier this morning and made clear that there had not been a decision to change our mask guidance.
2, it's being reported that President Biden plans to impose sanctions on Cuban officials because of the attacks on protesters. Can you outline the administration's goals with regard to those sanctions?
Sure. Well, I can confirm for all of you that there will be more from the Department of Treasury and the Department of State later this afternoon on sanctions, and the announcement will be coming from them. But in terms of our approach to Cuba and what we're trying to accomplish, we have, of course, condemned mass detentions, sham trials, and disappearances that are attempts to threaten the Cuban people into silence. We continue to call for the swift release of peaceful protesters who have unjustly been detained. We've made clear over the last week that addressing this moment was a priority for the administration and for President Biden, and that he had asked his team to look into a range of options that would both help the Cuban people, help provide humanitarian assistance, help look into addressing issues like the lack of internet access, and that also sanctions authority was a part of those considerations. So this is an announcement that will be coming later this afternoon. I'd also note that we'll continue to engage closely and coordinate with our international partners from the OAS to the UN and others to collectively condemn the actions of the Cuban government.
And then last, real quick, National Association of Realtors says that home prices are up 24.3% from a year ago to $363,300, a record. Are home prices too high for an economy that's supposed to be growing from the bottom up and middle out?
Well, first I would say the president is quite focused on making sure we're doing everything we can to help middle-class families as the economy is recovering and as there are ongoing challenges in our economy that have been longstanding, including supply chain issues, which you and many others are quite familiar with. And as he talked about a little bit last night, there are a range of factors that impact that. The shortage of lumber that is starting to pick back up has, of course, impacted the building of new homes, which has raised the prices of older homes. So his focus, and a big focus of this administration, is on addressing supply chain issues to help address some of these skyrocketing prices in the market. But also, he is focused on providing assistance to renters, to homeowners, and others to get through this period of time in our economy. Go ahead.
Jen, today China rejected a WHO plan for a second phase of an investigation into the origins of the coronavirus, including audits of laboratories and markets. What is the White House's reaction to that, and how will this impact the U.S. dealing with China on this going forward?
Well, let me first reiterate that the United States supports the WHO plan for Phase 2, which commits to ensuring these studies are scientific, transparent, expert-led, and free from interference. We have certainly seen the PRC's comments, again, rejecting Phase 2 of a WHO study. We're deeply disappointed. Their position is irresponsible and, frankly, dangerous. Alongside other member states around the world, we continue to call for China to provide the needed access to data and samples. And this is critical so we can understand to prevent the next pandemic. This is about saving lives in the future, and it's not a time to be stonewalling. I would note that we believe in a multilateral approach. That has not been an approach that has been taken prior to the president taking office, and that has been a big focus of his strategy as it relates to our engagement with China. So, and that relates to our approach to global health security, which is why we rejoined the WHO on day one. Unfortunately, Phase 1, as you all know, did not yield the data and access from China that we think is necessary. But our support for a multilateral approach and the Phase 2 plan is because it's rigorous and science-based. But most importantly, it's not just the United States calling for this. As a part of our renewed engagement and our efforts to build a coalition of support around the world with allies and partners, we're joined by the international community on this. Partners and multilateral organizations who are also calling for and pressuring China to be engaged in the second phase of this discussion. I would also note, I'm almost done, there's a lot to say about this topic. In Cornwall, which many of you were with us for that trip, the G7 leaders together called for a transparent, evidence-based investigation, including in China. And after the Phase 1 study, we were joined by allies and partners across the world in a joint statement calling for a transparent and independent analysis, expressing our concerns over the lack of access and urging momentum. It's clear China isn't living up to their obligations. What our focus is on is building this multilateral effort and support for putting pressure on and making clear that it's unacceptable and dangerous.
Do you see any consequences for China for this decision?
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of any policy process. I will tell you that, again, our approach to China as it relates to global health security is going to continue to be in a coordinated fashion with our international partners.
Just one last on China. Yeah. They have also started a new crackdown in Hong Kong, this time on children's book authors. Any thoughts on that?
I think we have expressed many times before, unfortunately, because there has been reason to express many times before our concerns about the crackdown on freedom of speech, freedom of media, crackdown on human rights activists in Hong Kong, and we continue to express that. Go ahead.
You mentioned there had not been a decision to change the guidelines on wearing a face mask for fully vaccinated Americans, but have there been any conversations within the administration about possibly changing those guidelines?
Well, we are guided by the science, and we're guided by our public health experts, and any decision would come from the CDC. The head of the CDC spoke to this earlier this morning.
So conversations within the administration, that's what the Washington Post was also reporting. There were early conversations within the administration about possibly changing those guidelines.
I've seen the reporting, but what I can tell you is that there has been no decision to change our mask guidelines. If any decisions about public health would be driven by the CDC. But of course, we are engaged with public health experts and the CDC about how to continue to attack the virus. And we've never said that battle is over. It's still ongoing. It would be more concerning, or should be more concerning, to all of you and the American people if we were not having those conversations. So there are certainly conversations about steps we can and should take, but I think Dr. Walensky was quite clear this morning.
And just one quick follow-up. We heard the CDC director today warn about the rise in the Delta variant, saying that it's spreading with incredible efficiency. At what point would the White House reconsider the protocols for the president and for administration officials?
Well, we're guided by the public health guidance and the CDC guidelines, and that's what we abide by here. They have not changed those, and so we continue to abide by the guidelines we have announced to all of you.